Hey, MBA hopefuls, you are on the air with MBA Waves, your weekly vidcast talking all things business and education. Don't forget to give us a like and a subscribe if you would like to follow the show. It helps us provide all this great free content for you on MBA Waves. Today on episode 137, we're talking about authenticity and the MBA application, including keeping it real and how language matters, acing the MBA essays and interview, and stories you can use from our guest's latest book, Mind Your Language, in your own application journey, or even to influence, engage, and predict in your MBA program and at work after. This week, I'm your host, Eric Lucrezia, joined by my co-host, Bara Sapir and Krithika Srinivasan. And we're joined by a special guest, a professor of marketing strategy at INSEAD, Abhishek Borah. Hi, everyone. How you doing?
Hi.
Welcome to MBA Waves. So, Professor, let's just jump right into it. How would you define authenticity?
I think authenticity is being real and being honest and being as truthful as you can be. And, I'll just utilize this movie that I saw recently. It's a very recent movie in which became very popular in India. It's called 12th Fail. And the movie is about this student who grows up in this village in this country in India in the middle of nowhere. And he, fails his 12th exam. And he fails it because the school that he's in, everyone cheats. And the police officer comes and realizes that everyone cheats in that particular school. And the next day, then he kind of changes himself. And then there's an exam. And he again doesn't cheat, but the rest of the others students cheat. So he passes third division, and the other students who cheat pass first division. And then, after many years, he always aspires to become an IS officer, civil services officer. And then when he's interviewed, he says, he's in front of these jury, in a sense, which make the decision for him to get admitted into the Indian Administrative Services. And then he is asked, what made you fail? I mean, you're a failure in your 12th exam. And he says it that I failed because this is what happened, the story, the backstory that I just gave you. And then I was just moved by it. And I'm sure many of the movie watchers were moved by it because he was so authentic. He was truly real in terms of what he was. He wasn't someone who speaks great English. He was someone who was a Hindi medium student and who tries to become an IS officer. And he's as real as someone as can be. And in the end, he's chosen. And, one of the judges says, should we recruit this guy? And he says, okay, if you don't recruit a person like him, who's as real as can be, who's like represents what inner India is all about, then what is this exam for? So I think if anyone aspires to be an MBA, they should be as truthful as possible. And, if they've failed, write that story and tell that story and the reason and the rationale for someone to be there, because everyone has a journey. All of us have a journey. I have a personal journey. And, our journey makes us who we are and makes us be true to someone else by being as authentic as it can be. I think if you fake stuff in your MBA applications, at the end, somewhere down the line, MBA admission schools are also pretty, smart enough to realize that this seems like a made up story, So I feel being true and being as real as possible really matters. And just writing things that come from the way you write, the way you kind of express yourself, the way who you are as a person, both in terms of content and style. I think those are the things which should be kind of thought about by aspirants and should be kind of manifested in the writing. If you try to use something else, which is superficial and is actually not really you, then, it'll come through. Maybe they might just get past the admissions, but at the end, it'll come and bite them later. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, as people who read these admissions essays, I mean, you get really good at sniffing out the the bogus stories. So yeah, it's weird because like you would imagine like this is not possible. Like,
yeah,
it's they can tell. Thank you.
One thing you told totally resonated with me, which was the need to impress somebody. And here it's obviously that calm and I know and also like a corollary to the story that you said, everyone wants to cheat in some way, but just to get in and make it happen. So one of the and of course, like, congrats on your new book,
Oh,
Mind Your
thank
Language. Now
thank
this
you.
is already available in India for the folks out there. I hope that they can get their hands on it. It's
Thank
really it's really been a great book and fascinating, with so many stories about how language can shape business. And especially in today's era of chat GPT and so on, I think it's so valuable in order to understand some of the interesting algorithms and other research that's being done there. Uh, can you just tell us, in all this beautiful curation, what's one of your most favorite story?
You know what I like? There are two stories that I like. One is about expletives, curse words. When we were small, I mean, we were never. I mean, my parents were, don't use this word, don't use this word. But over time, we kind of start using these words, because I mean that's part of our lives, right? And you'd think things like this may not have any applications in business. That okay, someone using a word like this, how will it affect you if you're in a context where a business decision is made or a commercial decision is being made? All right. But there's this research which shows that imagine there is a review you read. Okay, one review is this phone is really amazing versus another review is this phone is effing amazing. Okay, and effing, I'm just kind of cutting up the words, but the words are spelt out purely. And it's been shown that people actually like the reviews which have an expletive in them much more than reviews which are just have an adverb in them, such as really or something. All right, and which I find fascinating because this shows that expletives which may not have a place in business generally, you may not want to use words like this, can actually influence review readers of reviews, and they find such reviews to be helpful. And review sites want these kind of reviews because they want reviews to be helpful so that more customers come into the website and kind of check in this review and read this review and find it helpful. And using such words seems to make readers find these reviews much more authentic, much more real. So I find that fascinating. There's another one where it's about vagueness. You again, in a business context, you may not want to use vague words, right? Vague words are okay, somewhat, almost, where you're not giving a concrete answer to a particular question. And you again might think, okay, vagueness has no place in business. You want to be as concrete as possible. I mean, vagueness is important, and poets and lyricists of music use vague words all the time. I mean, Bob Dylan, he won a Nobel Prize, and there's so many interpretations of his music. And maybe one of the reasons why his music is liked so much is because we interpret his songs in different ways. We all have different interpretations. So vagueness has its positives, but can it have a positive in business? So again, there is another paper which I kind of write in my book. It's about how firms can actually use vague language to kind of deter entrants from entering a particular market, where firms come up with these reports, such as annual reports, where they talk about the business and they talk about what the firm is going to do next. Again, writing words which are kind of not giving the fact truly, all right, but almost kind of making everything vague, kind of helps firms to deter entrants from joining a particular market. So I find these things fascinating in terms of just how language, one from the consumer side, right? Once I'm a reviewer and I write something using a word which is like an expletive, can have an impact on other readers of such reviews. And on the other hand, you have firms who utilize this kind of language to kind of deter entrance. So these are just two examples of how language influences both sides here, from firm to firm and from consumer to consumer. And there are many examples which I cite in my book and I talk about in the book, and all of these are kind of referenced out of research, academic research, very rigorous academic research, and which is fascinating to me, and I hope readers find it fascinating.
How does this translate to the business school classroom? How does authenticity show up there or not show up there?
Yeah, I think it shows up there by the way that I kind of give certain tasks. Okay, so I, first of all, whenever I'm teaching, there are students who kind of partake in the discussions, And I think if you're real as a person, as an authentic as a person, so, I'll give you one example. All right. In India, at least, if someone speaks English, you kind of think, okay, this person is, okay, wow, but that person may be a complete fake, or a complete someone who's pretending. I can give you examples of CFOs or CIOs in the US who still have an Indian accent and are not faking it, and are so real and are so, pure in the way they do things. So in the MBA class, whenever I'm like interacting with some students where I suddenly see an accent popping up, where I think that this person doesn't have that accent actually, and why is he speaking or she speaking or they speaking like that, then I start determining, okay, there is something happening here, because this is not the real person that I'm actually interacting with. So there's one aspect of that, which is, how the students are interacting with me, and I kind of discern their way of speaking, and I kind of acknowledge, oh, there's something, which is not true, not truly what is real about this person, which kind of harms you, because if you're not being real in the way you are, I don't think that will help. Okay. Second is, I also have some aspects of learning where I give them some tasks where they have to create a marketing plan, which is an original marketing plan that they have to create. They have to come up with a strategy. They have to come up with a go-to-market strategy, think about all the positioning, segmentation, targeting. And again, the way they write it, the way they kind of present it to me, okay? Again, if it's, I can completely discern if it's picked up from somewhere else. And you already have a non-authentic bent in you, like a proclivity where you are generally being always borrowing things or kind of pretending things, it'll come through across your work also, when you're working with cases in the class, or you're working with learning materials in the class. And again, I can completely discern, okay, this person is completely faking it, has borrowed this idea from someone else, and it's not real. So again, that again affects your marks in a sense, your grades in a sense, because there are two aspects to it. One is participation, where I will of course look at the material and the content, but also there is some implicit heuristic I'm going to use if someone is being unreal, or I'm being not real and being fake in a sense. And that also will come through across the work that they submit. So if you're not kind of authentic from the very beginning, that's going to come through in your classes, in your participation with the professor in the class. It's also going to come across the way you deal with others, because networks are very important during an MBA. All right, the way you build your networks. And I think if everyone is real and everyone kind of senses someone being real, then they kind of kind of agree to the idea that this person is great to hang out with. Okay, if someone wants to hang out with, if you're kind of a little bit sloppy in your behavior, or kind of someone who no one wants to hang out with you, that's fine, that's who you are. But if you're pretending, that's not going to work out in the long run. So I think being real and being authentic really matters, and just being genuine. Genuine is I think the key word here. Yeah.
It seems like, you know, it seems like if you get off on the wrong foot and you're not authentic, the people aren't going to feel safe or know if they can actually trust who
Yeah.
you're showing up as.
Yeah.
Especially in the United States right now.
Is it also because you want to conform to a particular standard? Is that what's going on? Or is it like an impression of a particular standard according to that person?
Yeah, I think it's an impression of a particular standard according to that person. And no one has defined all this. INSEAD actually is proud of its diversity. And I think if students are more diverse, and they come and show their real backgrounds versus showing something which is inauthentic, that really hurts actually in the long run. Not only the person's career, short-term and future career, but also the school in a sense, because someone is not being real, and maybe the student was chosen primarily because the student had something which was special about them, which is the real authentic self and the genuine self, where you say this person came from a village and kind of did well, and students appreciate that. Now if you're trying to create an impression which is according to this person seems like the impression that should be created, okay, it's fine in the short run, okay, but everyone's going to know about the real person later down the line. And I'm going to catch it, or some discernible person is going to catch it that this person is faking it, right? So that's not going to help in the short term in the business school itself, or nor in the long term. And I think people are smart enough to realize that these are impressions. And there's a lot of impression management going on. I mean, MBA's MBA curriculums generally are 1 year or 2 years. INSEAD has a 1-year curriculum. It's very short. So everyone's trying to make an impression. Everyone's trying to show that they are this person or that person. But I think people appreciate the ones who are the most genuine. And I think if you can just be who you are, that is much more helpful than trying to create this all impression management thing, which happens a lot, I'm sure. I'm not an MBA student, and I'm sure it happens a lot.
Yeah, thank you for sharing all that. I mean, you bring up a couple of things. I wanted to ask you kind of, what language do you imagine or do you recommend using to convey that authenticity? But you said so many different interesting things there. I just want to comment that what you were just saying there now about being real. I mean, I think that shows up, I think, in a couple of steps. One, it's about being self-aware, right? Having the self-awareness of who am I? What do I bring to the table? Where do I fit in this world? Where I come from, where I'm going to, and so on. Industry that I work in and the school that I'm hoping to study at, and then having the courage to share that realness, right? So it's like it does take courage, like, and which that word courage is coming from the heart, right? Like not being afraid to be vulnerable and to put yourself out there. And I think to what Krithika was also saying, or I forget if it was Krithika or Bara who said it, but about either conforming or fitting in or so on. I mean, I think there's something very animal about us when kids pick this up, right? When like kids know like right away who the like, weird adult is in the room, like the kids can pick that out straight away. They have an instinct for that because they've not been, I don't know, layered with all those filters that we learn as adults, right? That a kid can pick out straight away someone who's not being authentic. And it's something that, like, I don't know, it makes your hair stand up on your neck or something like that. And so we're better at masking stuff as adults, I guess, but I don't think it really serves to get us anywhere. Your point about in reviews using curse words, swear words, that's interesting. Just to comment for a second and maybe think, okay, companies, right, in this corporate culture, cancel culture, like there's no way they would allow any kind of profanity to be in these reviews. So I think the reason why the reviews with curse words in them that say F this or that, like, of course it speaks to people because it just seems more authentic, right? It doesn't seem like a corporate culture vomit, whatever.
No, agree.
I also have a question for you. About, before I get to the real question I want to ask, but you were talking also about being real, and I wonder how do people who come from like a sort of bicultural background deal with that? Because they do what, I don't know if this term is known globally, but Americans say code switching a lot, and that often is referring to people who are, say, for example, from the African American community, grew up maybe in a predominantly African or Latino or whatever neighborhood community, and then perhaps at work or in academia or somewhere else that they find themselves sort of flip-flopping, and they're being authentic in both. They are truly both communities. So what do you think about that, having to flip-flop without appearing inauthentic?
This is a very interesting question, and I've thought about it. I'm very authentic, and I've decided, I think it's a call that you have to make. There's this interesting book by this person called Ralph Dobelli, and he has this thing called, Art of Living Wisely or something about the book. And he says, there are two selves that you have in your life. One is your personal self, and one is your work self. And he kind of suggests that always make sure that they're divided, and you have your work self, which is a completely different self of yours, okay, versus your personal self, where you're honest and the way you are naturally, okay. I have kind of decided that I'm going to be myself and my real self with everyone, okay. But I think there is a call that people have to make here, okay, which is, how much do you want to reveal about yourself to others? I believe in being vulnerable and being as true to yourself when you're in front of anyone, okay. But people have certain incentives and people have certain goals in their mind. They want to appear as someone, I mean, through dating to work, right? But at the end, someone's going to catch it, and someone's going to just know that this person is not the person that I was thinking he or she is. So my take on this is that this happens a lot in schools. I mean, at INSEAD too, I noticed that some students are trying to create this kind of code where they are different to someone, and then they're different to someone else. Now, I believe, as I've said, that I think it's the same person that should be with everyone else. But again, you see silos, right? You see that, okay, the Indians are hanging out together, the Chinese are hanging out together, the West Africans are hanging out together. Maybe they've decided themselves that this is who we are, and this is what we are deciding, that we will be with our kin, with the people that we know of. But that again harms them. And I think people across schools or different universities have to accept that, okay, people are fine with who they are hanging out, but they should also make this kind of decision that let's kind of hang with each other too, not forced though. All right, I mean, I hang out with my Indian community and I'm fine with that, but I also am not kind of closed off and kind of learning about other cultures. So I think there is this slight balance that people have to make in terms of understanding who they are, and they're fine with hanging on their own ilk. But then they also make this decision, and I don't think it should be concerted or like forced. It's very naturally, okay, they're going out for a party or they're going to some event which they're all partaking in, but then going out and meeting others and being as honest as they are and being real as they are and being this having the accent that they have rather than trying to appear someone else which they are not. That's my take. I mean, people have different philosophies. I believe in just being who you are and kind of carrying it across different spheres of your life.
I very much agree with you. I also recognize that sometimes some people are coming from a place of privilege, in the sense that when they either have different goals at work or school or whatever, that they may be facing certain prejudices and so on. So without going down that rabbit hole too far, let me pivot back to my original question, which was more about like applicants, they want to bring their best stories in their applications for applying for their MBA program. So what language do you think they should be using to convey that authenticity?
Yeah, I think, I don't know of any research which has kind of looked at MBA applicants' research and the way that they write, and trying to see how much of these essays get accepted versus don't get accepted. It'd be interesting. Maybe there is research from the educational world where they have kind of analyzed the language utilized. In my opinion, I think it should be as simple as possible without any jargons. All right. It should be direct. All right. It should have certain stories or anecdotes about someone's past and how they have kind of, taken this journey in life, and from a personal sphere to a professional sphere. So one is a story about themselves. One is as simple as possible without any jargons, as direct as possible. All right. Without any, I mean, you can kind of say something indirectly, but be as direct as possible. Be, share your failures and share your successes. If you've had more failures, of course, share it and be as true as possible in the learnings that you've had from these experiences. Because, again, there are cultural biases here. A lot of people in India at least don't want to admit to failures, because once you are a failure, you're kind of recognized as a failure, versus the US has a different culture. Failure is almost like a step to learn. So I would think, I would actually suggest people to just be real and share their failures and their successes. I mean, if they had more successes, great, but being, in a sense, cognizant of the fact that we all go through failures and successes, and just being very real. I mean, what we've been talking about, I think simplicity, directness, stories, anecdotes, right, about sharing successes and failures. And one very important thing which Eric talked about is self-awareness, which should be somehow conveyed in that essay or in that letter or in that document that they're writing. I think a lot of people come to MBA programs without being self-aware, and they're just going with the tide and joining the bandwagon of let's do an MBA. And I've seen and I've had discussions with many students in their MBA programs where they come and meet me and they say they're introspective and they're kind of learning about their life and what decisions they'll make next. But I keep on thinking, okay, why didn't they do this before? I mean, it's great that they do it in an MBA program, and many students don't even evolve and think about all of this. They just want to get a consulting job. Okay, let's get that job. Let's get to the next thing. But I think self-awareness of who you are as a person and what has made you to actually take this kind of leap and make this decision to do an MBA is very important. And if you can convey that self-awareness in your document, that will be, I think that's something which will really rise compared to the other documents which these admissions committees see. Just being aware of who you are, and talking about your evolution as a person, from both personal and to a professional life. I think those aspects are important.
There's some really golden stuff there, especially self-awareness, which is so critical for leaders that you're developing. And then comes the other, the way that I think of authenticity is probably also like the other meaning of it, which would be like, we know it is real, so we know that there's proof that that is real for authenticity, right? Typically, because we can see the evidence in either their behavior or action. Say, for example, someone says that, I treat everybody equally, then you see evidence of it in maybe in the classroom, or maybe when they're with a peer group, or maybe with when they're like working with their affinity club or something. So I feel that the actions and behaviors would speak a lot more. And how can candidates thereby use this and keep it real in MBA interviews?
Again, I think is just being genuine and being aware of where this question is coming from, and how does it relate to their persona and their life, and how I mean, how are they reacting. So if they're asked a question about give me a story about your life, I think it's just being as honest as possible, and not trying to kind of talk around things, and just being real as possible. Because finally, I think there's one thing that I want to say is that every MBA applicant has a school. Okay, if someone wants to do something, do an MBA, they'll get through some MBA program. They may not get through one school that they're aiming for, but they will get one, okay, if they're aiming to do it. So I think finally there is one school who will accept the person as the person is, versus someone who is trying to appear as someone who is not real. I think people have to take that into account and say, okay, I'm just going to be as real as possible as I am. It's like going on a date, and not trying to pretend someone that you are someone else. I think just being you, and the way you are, and the way you have been brought up, and the way your stories are linked, and then the way that you are as a person right now, I think those things, just being the way you are and just communicating that with the interviewers, right? I think just having a different persona and creating a different persona for the interview, I think people are smart enough to know, okay, this person is kind of faking it, or not being genuine. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I had to unmute myself. This is all so interesting, and we're living in such strange times, at least in the United States, where you've got authenticity and then you've got this hyper intensity. And I'm thinking, in politics, right? Like people are always like, oh, it's a politician, they're not authentic. And then everyone talks about Biden as being, well, no, he's a good guy. He's, and so it's really interesting how authenticity like bounces in different milieus, especially like dating. I know, I think Joni Mitchell said, if you really want to really get to know someone, or like I'm going to mess up Joni Mitchell's quote, but she talks about, something about, staying with one person really allows you to get really deep in relationship, rather than dating and dating and dating. And, and, because you keep on getting bored with your own stories that you're telling different people, and those become caricatures in themselves, right? Like when you start telling a story and then you embellish it a different way. And like, I certainly get bored telling people some things about me. So I can only imagine. And it's good that the MBA process and the interviews are a very short period, right? So what's also compounding all of this is that we're dealing with AI now, right? And in your recent book, you had shown some of these cutting edge mining techniques. And I'm curious, AI is all about inauthenticity in a way, right? So what is the future of MBA admissions with AI, and what are your thoughts in general about AI?
Yeah, I think AI should be thought of as something which is like your agent. It's like you're the manager of your life, and you have AI as someone who works for you. Okay, that's how I think of AI. And I don't think any one of us can kind of ignore this and kind of live a life, okay, we're going to ignore the impact of AI, because AI makes your life much more efficient and effective. I've seen it in my life, and the way I use it for coding, something I use, say, Python as a programming language for my research. And I use ChatGPT or any of the Llama, for getting help and getting ideas, and for seeing the code actually, which is running in the back end. So I use it as someone who helps me in my overall decision making and in my life. Now, for if you think about MBA applications and you think about the creative aspects which go into an MBA application, I think at one end you have this AI tool which can help generate a baseline for you to start off with. All right. And then you can come up with your stories and your ideas and your life and kind of add on to those stories through AI. All right. So kind of like mingling both the research that you have done in your life and your stories, and kind of using the AI as a tool, as a stepping stone. All right. So that's the perspective that I will take. Okay. Where I use the AI as a tool. So I may not write the best language possible. All right. But I'll talk about the way I am. Okay, I'm a person who writes simple language. I am XYZ. I am this. I am that, and kind of giving the AI all the information to actually show the real you that you are. All right. But at the end, it has to be you who actually has the story. All right. So I'll use it. I'll use the AI as someone who helps me, aids me in my application, rather than someone who replaces me. All right. I wouldn't think of it as something which is supplemental versus something. I'll think of it as something which is complementary. Now, at the other end, you might think, okay, if this is the case, all MBA applicants are going to use ChatGPT or something to start off with their MBA applications, and everything's going to look the same. Now, what I'm saying here is, what you can do is you can give AI all the information about you, your story, your background. I live here. I was born here. I have Assamese as a background language. I know 5 other languages. I've done research in this. I have worked in XYZ. So just giving some history, and this is the way I write. Can you come up with some ideas, to start my story? I have this as a story. Can you come up with a line which helps me in my starting point for my admissions? So I think in this way, where you kind of iterate with the AI, which is basically helping you as a counselor in a sense, as someone who helps you in creating that whole document, I would actually kind of support that idea versus saying the AI, okay, write this for me and I'm done. So something which is more of a one-to-one, where you are using the AI tool as something which guides you and helps you in your whole application versus something which replaces you. That would be my take on this. Yeah. And it's a very useful thing. People might have certain prejudices against it. Okay, it's replacing us. But the thing is, you all have to admit that AI is going to stay, and it's going to get much easier. At the push of a button, basically, the button or whatever will have, a content just, created in front of us. The thing is, do you want yourself to be replaced by this content which is generated by a machine, based on documents which the machine has learned over time? Or do you want to use this machine to kind of complement your story, all right, help you in writing your story, drafting your story, creating this content which speaks about you, but using the AI as a tool to help you write it better, for example? All right. But note, you can also give the AI all the information, the personality characteristics about you. You can basically let the AI know, I am this, I'm empathetic as a person, I grew up here, this is my story, I have these stories in my life. All right. Perhaps the AI can come up with a small like short size content which will be kind of the starting point for you to write the full document.
It's super interesting because AI is all about just this marketplace of words, right?
Yeah.
And it's not a knowledge machine, right? It doesn't have the knowledge.
Yeah.
And so, but exactly the way that you're talking about it, I've used it, and I found it to be incredibly efficient and incredibly helpful. I wrote a poem based on Dr. Seuss, like a Dr. Seuss modality, and it was like, but it was an activist poem, and it was really helpful. Like, it was really helpful because that's not my normal voice, and so I was able to partner with this tool and come up with something that was authentic, but it has limitations, just like we do. You know?
Just like we do. It has limitations.
Eric, you're on mute.
There was a baby crying in the hallway. Sorry, muted myself as well. I wanted to, take this conversation and now extend it towards the classroom as you are a student, like moving beyond the MBA admissions process. And there was something you said about 20 minutes ago in this conversation that I thought was very interesting. Me and Krithika, who work as admissions consultants, we guide our clients to be as authentic as possible and to help them find their story, find their voice, and help them decide, which there's a lot of things that happen in 25, 30 years, right? The average age of an MBA applicant, which to pick and choose. And so we're very much into helping them tell that authentic story, as much as admissions is very much interested in receiving those authentic stories. And then you made me think of something. You talk about like people who were admitted because of that thing that makes them special, that made them unique and stand out. They're going to contribute to that classroom so uniquely. And then they behave otherwise. That admitted student comes and kind of masks that authentic character that they presented so vulnerably in the admissions process, and then they come to class and they're behaving like maybe the way they think they should, or some competitive way, or trying to be cool. Especially when you're going abroad. I mean, it's super intimidating doing your MBA in a foreign country. You're learning, your learning curve is like triple. So all of that said, I wanted to ask, in your experiences with MBA grads or students, what are some of the best business schools around the world? You've worked at Wharton, you're working at INSEAD, I think you work at University of Washington, I believe.
Yes.
What are some of the schools around the world that you would advise students to maybe rephrase the question. In your experiences with grads from some of the best schools around the world, how would you advise these students to be ready for business school?
I would first of all ask them to just sit back and think what they do with life before applying to an MBA or before applying to a business school. Perhaps their calling is to be a musician. Perhaps, they don't need an MBA. Perhaps they can just, use the current network that they have and, try to get a job or rise up the ranks in the kind of business that they're in. I think first of all, just sitting back and thinking, okay, what will I gain from doing an MBA in my life, right? And this comes again with the idea of self-awareness. Eric just talked about. It's where am I? Who am I? Okay, what do I need in my life? Perhaps you need to build a network. All right, that's a fair enough criteria for you to do an MBA, because MBA builds network. You kind of at INSEAD, someone who maybe just knowing Indians at the end knows people from 100 countries all over the world. All right, grows as a person because this person has grown up in a particular area in India or wherever, where he or she or they just have seen one kind of person. Perhaps they want to, experience this diversity in their life. Okay, that could be a decision. That's perfectly fine. Someone's decision could be, okay, they're in banking and they want to get into product management or something, right? So these are all fair questions. I think, first of all, they just need to sit back and think, okay, am I joining the bandwagon of because everyone's doing an MBA, should I do it? Versus, okay, this is where I'm in life. Do I need to do an MBA? What will I gain from doing this MBA? All right, I think that's the very first thing that they need to decide. All right, and if you're kind of clear on that, that will kind of guide you through all your other steps in terms of the essay, okay? Because you'll already have this story in your mind of the reason that you wanted to do this MBA, versus think of a person who's just joining the bandwagon without thinking, okay, why am I doing an MBA? I'm doing an MBA because I want to do it from Wharton or INSEAD or Kellogg or Harvard and get this.
Or your parents want you to.
Yeah, get the stamp in my life. I think one very important criteria, which I would say, is just sit back and think, okay, what do you want to do with your life? Is an MBA important for me? Yes, if it is, it could be professional, it could be personal, it could be growth, it could be diversity, it could be, traveling around the world. I think that's the first step. Okay. And then just being, if you are clear with that story of what you want to do with your life and are clear in terms of, okay, this is what I'll get out of this MBA. Okay. And you've kind of tick marked the two things that you're looking forward to and which you have already thought of. And your selection of schools also is based on that. So INSEAD is known for its diversity, right? So if I was trying to do an MBA, say I was working in an investment bank in India, I'm 26 years old and I'm thinking of doing an MBA, but what I want to do is meet people all over the world, travel a bit, meet people with diverse perspectives, learn from one of the best professors, some of the best professors in the world, stay in Fontainebleau in France, in Europe, and stay in Singapore, and also have an opportunity to go to the US at Wharton. Then I'll think, okay, these are all great things that I actually want to experience in my life. And vis-a-vis another business school, say at Kellogg or say Duke, where maybe I'm not sure. Okay, I'm not sure of the curriculum. Maybe I'm just situated in Durham, in North Carolina, and I'm just there for 2 years. But I meet a lot of people, and I become an expert in, say, Duke is great for management or finance. If that's my calling, and if that's what I want to do in life, and become an expert in finance, I'll decide to do that. But I would, if I were me, say I was a younger me, and I didn't do an MBA, and I would decide what I want to do. My decision would be based on diversity, knowing more about the world, traveling around the world. And then I would decide, okay, what is the opportunity cost of all of this? Okay, and I'd kind of make a heuristic, a calculation in my mind. Okay, I'll pay this much, but I'm learning this much, I'm growing this much, and I'm meeting so many people, and I think this is worth it. All right. Because sometimes what happens is when you land up in an MBA and then I'm not getting a job, I'm looking at this, they're kind of very confused. If you already have certain tick marks in your head before you apply, okay, I'm looking for diversity, I'm looking for growth. Maybe I may not get a job at the end, the world may go into a recession or something wrong may happen, but you already have these markers in your head personally, at a personal level. All right. I think just situating yourself and seeing, okay, this is what I want from an MBA, and these are my personal goals. Of course, they're professional goals too. And then looking at schools, okay, where should I apply? And then going ahead with the process. I think that would be my advice. Yeah, rather than just thinking of doing an MBA just for the sake of it. Because everything which is authentic that we've been talking about will flow from there. Once you've kind of decided and are self-aware of your decisions.
Yeah.
So that's so beautifully put. Looks like authenticity in aspirations, intentions, as well as goals.
Yes. Yeah.
Guys, we might have to wrap it up there. Anyone else have any other questions they wanted to ask, Professor? Or where can we find your book?
You can find it in Amazon.com. It's available worldwide. It's called Mind Your Language, Influence, Engage, Predict. I talk about basically the idea of monetizing language and how you can utilize language to not only influence business, but also your life. All right. So I have lots of examples and anecdotes from sports to music, and it's written for anyone can read it. It's very simply written. It's useful, I think. You can find it on Amazon.com, a paperback. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to me at my email at abhishek.borah@insead.edu. Or you can also connect with me on LinkedIn. Yeah, thank you very much.
You're welcome. I'm going to put your email at BORAH.
Yeah, at insead.edu.
I had to say that, I found the Metallica versus Bieber chapter very interesting.
Okay, yeah.
Metallica versus Justin Bieber?
Yeah.
Yeah, and there was if Metallica were more like Justin Bieber, what would happen? That was very interesting.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you again once again, Professor, and
thanks, Eric.
Krithika, of course, for joining us on our
Thanks,
weekly
Krithika. Thanks, Bara.
vidcast. Guys, if you like today's episode, give us a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to stay on top of more MBA Waves content. And check us out on MBAWaves.com to stay on top of the upcoming episodes. See you next time. Bye-bye.